the creator passion economy is something that is really proving to be sustainable as well. Like Skillshare is a company that is really proving your third are replacing bricks with bytes. And as I understand, you came across Skillshare because of your journey into vlogging. So can you share with us how that even began?
I mean, it's ed tech, which means it's remote learning. It used to be you have to go someplace to learn, and now you can do it online. So that helps with the carbon footprint, just like Dialpad and Zoom do. It is also empowering micro entrepreneurs. We call it a prosumer segment because a lot of these people are freelancers, and there's just the gig economy. I mean, the economy is structurally shifting. In our parents' generation, they'd work for one company. Now, folks around my age, they work for a handful of companies. And a lot of these millennials are just like, they don't even work for a company. They Airbnb host a little bit. They do some Uber here and there, whatever, some freelance design. And so it's just empowering that whole trend. But yeah, it was instrumental in my vlogging journey. I didn't come into it because of vlogging, but I started using the platform a lot more because of my vlogging. Originally, I felt God just tell me like, hey, just start making videos.
You heard a voice?
Yeah, not audible this time, but just in my prayer, like it's just a sense, It was like, hey, make videos. And in a way, it kind of made sense because in my work, I see the future of media and obviously everything's moving towards video. But in so many ways, it made no sense because I don't have any time. I've never made a video in my life. I didn't know anything about video editing and all the stuff around editing. It's not just the technical things, but the storytelling and all that stuff. I had no idea any of it. I tried a bunch of things kind of in my own strength in a way, and it didn't really work. And many years later, I heard it again and it was like, okay, now's the time. So I really just went all in on it. And for a year, so I went on Skillshare. I took a bunch of editing classes. There's this other great thing called Jump Cut. It's a YC company. And Jump Cut teaches you more, what are the characteristics of viral content? How do you get people to watch and share your content? And so I poured my heart and soul, hours and hours, heart and soul into this thing. And I managed to get one video a month, which is not that much. I mean, if you want to be an influencer, quote unquote, you got to be putting stuff out much more frequently than that. But for about a year, I really struggled and I got out one video. And people liked it. They were my friends though. Each video kind of averaged like a couple hundred views. So I don't think they were really sharing it. I wanted to give up many times, but each time I just go back. It's like, did you hear God's voice? And yeah, it's kind of easy when you hear God's voice because you just know you need to do it. And so I'd get back on the horse and start riding again. And there was really a step change in this whole thing when I met Nusir from Nas Daily. And we had dinner. It was me and him and his girlfriend and my wife. And they were like, hey, so how are you guys doing? What's been going on? And we had just come back from this marriage conference, actually, where there was crazy. It was like the most transformational experience that I've ever been through. Crazy transformational, crazy spiritual. And Nas and Aline, they don't share the same faith as us. But I think we sat there and just talked for 3 hours about this thing. And then we got very vulnerable because there's some very, very vulnerable stuff that happened to us. And they were just kind of shocked that we were getting so vulnerable. And we were shocked too. We're like, what the heck is happening? But for some reason, we were just sharing all this stuff. And then they got very vulnerable. They shared a bunch of things about their upbringing, their relationship and stuff like that. And so anyways, we just really hit it off. On the way home, we were driving them home. And Nas said to me, he's like, hey, so why were we introduced? We had a mutual friend who was going to introduce us. And so I said, I think Dominique just wanted to get us together because I make videos. And I'm one of the few investors who makes videos. He's like, what? You make videos? No way. You spent this whole dinner not talking about videos? This is what I do. Aline too. So yeah, I know. That's why I think. So he said, you got to come by the office. So he came by the office and next week, and he spent 90 minutes with me, just going through my whole strategy and everything that I was thinking through. He fixed me. I was really doing the wrong thing in many ways. He was so gracious, so generous with his time, invested so much with me. I joke around. I tell him I owe him my firstborn son because he was so generous. And it was really transformational. 200 views. The first video that he helped me with got 170,000 views, then 400,000, then 600,000. Top performing videos, I think about 1 million views now at this point. It's not about views really. It's about the engagement, the likes, and the comments and things, but those numbers are also very, very strong on the engagement side of things. You mentioned the videos that I've done for Tree Dots and things. We have this strategy, I guess, at our firm where Ramanan, he writes long, very in-depth pieces, then a very small but influential group read his blog. But
I appreciate the fact that he would write a specific blog for each company you invest in, because it really gives me an understanding of where you're coming from.
Yes, and the thesis and everything. So he attacks that side of things, and then I kind of make some of that digestible or take a little piece of it and make it into a 3-minute video that's more mass. You can't get that deep in a 3-minute video, but I try and make it such that it's a little more shareable and just easy to digest. Don't use big words and things.
I imagine people would be very curious. What was it that Nas was advising you that allowed you to experience that growth? Because I think with that first video, Beware of Black Christmas, you bounced that script between yourself 5 times. So he really had a lot of hand in making sure that it was as good as could be.
Again, he was so generous. So the original tips, some of them were very tactical. Like Facebook used to optimize for 1-minute videos, but now they're optimizing for 3-minute videos because they want longer form content. So make your videos 3 minutes. YouTube is more like 8 to 10 minutes sort of thing. So you got to make them 3 minutes, make them shorter. But I was doing like 1-minute videos on Facebook and 10-minute videos on YouTube. He's like, no, do 3-minute on Facebook. Facebook's easier to share because there's no share button really. And I think now there is on YouTube, but there wasn't back then. You can share with your friends, people will check it out. YouTube's very different. So I got off YouTube. Some of it is stuff like in Jump Cut, they share the 3 characteristics of viral content is you need to tell a story. And a story involves a character trying to overcome something like an obstacle. So that's story. It needs to be something that challenges assumptions. So if you say, the sky is blue, and this is why nobody's going to care. But if you say the sky is actually green, but you thought it was blue, and here's why, then people are going to be like, oh, interesting, that's worth sharing. And then the third thing has to solicit an emotional reaction. So if it makes you laugh or inspires you or makes you cry or whatever, or makes you angry, a lot of this stuff gets shared very quickly these days. That's why fake news is really successful at getting viral, even though it's fake. But the thing that Nas really honed in on me was that if you want content that's going to go sort of mass, he said, you need to forget everything you've learned about the English language. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, most people in the world don't speak English like you and me. Most people in the world don't speak English at all, but the ones who do, and they might understand some broken English or they can read some subtitles, they definitely don't speak it like you and me. You have to forget everything you learned and just speak much more simply. Let me give you an example. I made a video in Korea and I was talking about the Korean alphabet, which is a very famous story in Korea. There's a king who we used to use the Chinese alphabet, but then he's like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Let's make it phonetic. So he invented this alphabet. And so most videos that make that story, they'll say there was a king, his name was King Sejong, he invented the alphabet and this is how he did it. This is still Nas talking about it. And he's like, for my video, in the Nas Daily video, I just say there was a king in Korea and he made the alphabet and this is how he did it. Because Sejong doesn't matter, man. If you know him already. If you don't know him, it's going to go one ear, out the other ear. And if you have a few words like that, people just shut off your video because you have so many choices for content these days. So just make it super simple. Like they all need to be words that you understand. He's got this thing called Nas Academy. So if anyone's interested in becoming a creator, like go there. It's an amazing platform. It was offline first, but now they have it online. He talks about, I forget the exact thing, but it's like, if a 12-year-old in Vietnam cannot understand your video, then it's too complicated. So you need to make it super, super simple. That's how it gets shared. So that's the thing that he drove in to me more than anything else. I think that was quite different.
I love that you channeled Nasir so well. It sounded just like him.
Well, the first videos, my wife kept telling me, like, stop talking like Nas. And I'm like, when you learn a craft, when you learn the violin, you try and play like your teacher, right? When you learn painting, you have to paint like Leonardo, whatever. And so when I was learning vlogging, I wanted to literally be like Nas. I was doing everything he was telling me to do and like emulating him completely. And then like with any craft, after you understand how to copy the master, then you can start to develop your own style. Same thing for investing. Like I literally just tried to download Ramanand's brain at the beginning, like understand why he made decisions the way he did. The faster you do that, the faster you can develop your own intuition on why your opinion might differ or how you do it differently. So I learned to imitate Nas actually pretty well.
And what was the process like involving your children as well in your videos? I noticed that Elaine appeared as well once as the one who did not put her self-interest before the company.
Yes. I mean, she's my biggest supporter, but I gotta say she had a lot of questions about the vlog at various points in time. She has this love-hate relationship with social media in general, I think. I'd love to feature her more, but she's always just a little bit cautious about featuring. But then video, you gotta make sure makeup's done and all these things. So with the kids, it's a lot more fluid, I guess, because as long as I pay them with screen time, they're willing to do whatever I ask them. And it's been awesome because anyone with kids would know, like, it's always such a struggle to balance work. When you're doing work, you feel guilty because you're not hanging out with kids. When you feel like hanging out with kids, you feel guilty if you're not working. And so for me, this has been this really interesting intersection at the Venn diagram where I'm making a video about tree dots or Joro or whatever. And we actually get to sit there and hang out together and make a video that they're involved in. So I get to hang out with them, with my family and my kids while I'm doing something good for my work. And I feel like that's just such a tremendous blessing. I didn't really think to get them involved at first, but they're just a lot cuter, a lot more compelling than I am.
And have you seen the vlogging have an impact on the kind of work that you do? I mean, like, it seems as though VCs are getting more and more involved in content creation. There's like Joma Tech, there's Justin Khan, Gary Tan, there's Harry Stebbings. They're really making a name for themselves by putting out their own content.
Absolutely. I think it is an important differentiator. Not everyone needs to do it. I know some investors who are like amazing investors. I don't know if it's Brian, who I mentioned earlier, or maybe Ryan Sweeney from Excel. I don't know. One of these guys that sits on a board with us in one of our companies. I remember reading a bio saying, "You won't see me at a conference. You won't see me tweeting. You won't see me blogging. I want to spend all my time helping my companies directly, not building a brand for myself." I forget who it is, but it's like somebody who's a very, very good investor, and anybody would take their money. But I think that it's certainly an interesting way to differentiate yourself. It works for Harry, right? Harry Stebbings, like he came out of nowhere and he just started.
He's so young.
He's so young. He's such a genuine, nice guy. And that's why I think it works with him. But he's so young and he knew nothing about the industry. And now, I mean, he gets crazy deal flow, man. And, you know, he's got a firm that he set up and everything. In this business, when you start out in something, you have to figure out, okay, what is everyone doing? And then how can I emulate them? But the more you want to be in the top 1%, the more what you do has to look totally different from what everyone else is doing. Because if you just try and copy, then you're always going to try and catch up and you revert to the mean, because the best practice is just going to get you to the mean. So I remember when we started in the business, until like 2009, I think everyone saw VC as like public equity, or it's kind of like, let's pick the right horse, you bet on them and they do well, and that's great. But the thing is, it's a small space. So there's a lot more money available than there are interesting deals. And so there's a firm in Andreessen Horowitz, I mentioned Mark earlier, they kind of realized, hey, we need to disrupt this and we need to actually be much more proactive about how we add value. So when I started in the industry, I was thinking, okay, there's actually a Harvard Business Review case study on Andreessen Horowitz. So I actually read the review and I was like, okay, we need to be like them. And I tried to do all these things that they were doing. And I realized like, you're never going to beat Andreessen at Andreessen's game. There's just no way. But
and there's so many people as well, like 90 people split up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100 something now. You're never going to beat them at their game. But what we realized with Dialpad, as I mentioned, is like Mark Andreessen's not going to pick up the phone and call a Malaysian telco for Craig. I mean, he has a ton of value, but I figure out how to add value in a very different way. There's this way to add value around this cross-border stuff. There's a way to add value around some of the climate stuff where we're very sort of in-depth and thinking about that. And then vlogging, yeah, at the time, especially now, Gary Tan is doing some videos, which I think are great. But yeah, at the time, there was nobody doing videos in venture. And for Joro, we actually wrote a song. I never in a million years thought that music would be a source of value add for a portfolio company and a VC firm. I'm pretty sure that I was the only VC in the world maybe who is making videos like vlogging as a source of value add. And when you go to a company, you say, hey, I'll get you 500,000 views exposure for your company. Is that interesting? Yeah, they love it. I was making a video about Joro and they're very thoughtful about their language on their website and their values and all these things. So I was just writing the script and I think 2 words happened to rhyme. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I just started writing more. And then next thing you know, I had a song and I'm like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. So I asked a K-pop friend, a producer friend of mine, to help me with it a little bit. And I had Sanchali listen to it. And she's like, this is amazing. She loves it now. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple iTunes and things. And she shares it with all her friends. I tried to blog. I mean, Mark and Fred Wilson and Brad Feld, all these guys that I met and hugely admire, just try to do the things they do. But I realized like, it doesn't mean you shouldn't blog, but you can't copy other people. So I'm just increasingly getting comfortable in my own skin, doing things that are very different and realizing that that's okay. In fact, you kind of need to do that if you want to get better and better at this game, at any game, really.
And another thing that everyone seems to be jumping onto is Clubhouse, which both you and your wife have jumped into. And there are so many startup founders and VCs as well on it. So what is your take on it after being on that platform?
Yeah, Clubhouse is great. I think I'm very wary of social media in general. Again, it's that like consumption versus investment mindset. I'm much more an investment person. And so I think like defer pleasure. When I find myself swiping on something for a long time or talking on something or listening to something for a long time, I'm just very careful about it because I'm very goal oriented still. And so I got an invite, I think late last year or something like that. And I just put it away. I was like, oh, social media, I can't deal with this, whatever. And then my wife got on it a little bit after that. And she's like, hey, this is your thing. You would really thrive here. You really enjoy it. I guess I talk a lot. I like to talk. And she's like, it's a startup founders and VCs. It's the platform for that. And you bring a unique perspective with all the stuff that you're doing. And so you should totally be on this. You spend more time. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I went on for one day, just like checking it out in the midst of the day and everything. And that night I ended up we're modding a room. I was up till 3 a.m. and I was like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. Like people are asking me all these questions and I'm able to help them. And I'm also learning so much. Where else are you going to hear like a real-time conversation of Malcolm Gladwell and Adam Grant talking about their latest book and how things have changed since the prior book? And it's like an amazing place to learn and to share. But yeah, it was also quite wary, like any social media thing. And my wife is very active. She watches Netflix. And so it's kind of replaced Netflix for her on certain nights and things. And I don't really watch much Netflix. So for me, it has to eat into other stuff like my sleep or time with the kids or work or time with God. And so I haven't spent as much time as her. I said, I'll always mod a room with you. You just got to give me notice. You can't be like, hey, let's go in right now. Just give me some notice so I can plan around it. But we love it. And I think there's so many different applications, not just work-wise, obviously a ton of VC startup stuff happening there, but faith-wise as well. Like we've started some rooms. We're very prayerful about it because you don't want to turn people off, I guess. We've been on there and met people randomly who are actually from the same church as us, but in Beijing. And like we had a faith at work room that we set up. We ended up like praying for each other and people were crying because they're so impacted by it. And just people from Kansas and stuff like we never would have met otherwise. And this is an area that I'm actually very passionate about, like God using technology to bring people closer into relationship with each other and to him. And so I feel like there's some really interesting applications in that realm as well in Clubhouse. So big fan, a little bit wary just because of my character, but I think really excited about it overall.
I read that this year your church said that it's all about creating space for God. And one of the key verses is, in my Father's house, there are many rooms. And I wonder how you are creating space this year and what your plans are.
Very good question. Well, going into the year, I actually had a lot of stuff on my plate. I was actually planning on auditing a seminary class this year and some church responsibilities as well. Like I was running the finance committee at our church. So step back from that. Actually, yesterday was the handover for the weekly operational responsibilities. So work-wise, not working less, but just trying to be much more focused on doing less things better. A lot of this actually coincided with my father got cancer late last year, and it was a very difficult thing to go through. A lot of positives to it. I think God definitely has a plan. Absolutely have faith that there's supernatural healing in store for him. I'm actually going to preach about it on March 7th here. But yeah, there were definitely like ups and downs. It just puts things in perspective. Like who cares about getting a deal done when your dad has got cancer? The doctors say he's got a 10 to 30% chance of living. And it coincided with my pastor kind of getting this download from God about, that the theme for this year is to create space. And so, I realized like we needed to just create as much space as possible. And those are some of the things that we managed to do. Still more to come, but those are some initial steps.
Well, thank you, John, so much for your time. I normally love to end of my interviews with these questions. Do you feel like you've found your why?
For sure. It's very, very, very obvious to me. I've tried every pleasure of the world. And I know that one day in his courts, in the presence of God, is better than 1,000 years elsewhere. And so my mission in life is to experience extreme intimacy with God, firstly, and secondly, enable others in experiencing extreme intimacy with God, because I feel it's very selfish for me to, without sharing it and just experience it myself. And that very much aligns with what Jesus said, which is like, what are the greatest commandments? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And the second is love others as you love yourself. So to me, it's very obvious. Like everything points to that.
And what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I think this might be the first time I've ever actually said this in public. I feel like God is doing something in the realm of technology. If you look historically, in general, there's always this human resistance to change. And I feel like God has always been in change, especially technological change. I mean, I'll give you an example. So Billy Graham, widely known as the kind of most successful, quote unquote, evangelist in the history of the world. Well, I mean, besides Jesus, maybe. He was an advisor to every single US president from, I forget, like Nixon or Kennedy, I can't remember, like straight through till he passed away. Places where it was like insane. Deng Xiaoping, communist China. Kim Jong-il, he went to go meet and share with. If you think about what he did and why he did it, at the time, it was very clear to him that he needed to use every tool at his disposal to accomplish this very big mission that he had. And a lot of pastors at the time, they were saying like the new thing was TV and radio. Like, TV, Hollywood, that's evil. That's the devil's area. You can't go there. And he's like, no, I mean, there's the Lord's and everything in it. Does TV not belong to God? We got to use TV. We got to use radio. So he went out there, used newspapers, used everything, and then used that to promote his crusades. And that's how he was able to have the impact that he had. If you think about technological advancement, there's been the printing press that helped to get much, much more widespread adoption of all sorts of literature. And so as we project forward, there's like crazy stuff going to happen. There's going to be like VR, churches. And there's going to be things like Clubhouse where people from around the world can get together and pray for each other and have an impact. And things like Uber have already enabled me to pray for thousands of Uber drivers. So I think that there's something here that God is doing, and I'd love to just be a part of that. And I feel like there are 8 billion people in the world today. A couple billion people say that they're Christians in some way, shape, or form. God loves everybody. It's not an in-out sort of in-group, out-group sort of thing, but I think he wants deep personal relationship with everybody. And I think that means the 2 billion people got to get closer to him. I think that more people got to just like know about him too. And so I'd love to get 1 billion more people into the kingdom. It's crazy to think about, but I'm going to die trying to set up a foundation and really build it like a company and start iterating on some media and tech products that will enable us all to experience and enable others in experiencing extreme intimacy with God. And actually, the money's not really a problem, I think. It's much more about getting the people. It's the same thing for startups too. I think money is the air, but you got to have the body to breathe. I'm slowly starting to recruit people who want to be on that journey. So if any of your listeners are interested in that, please tell them to DM me.
And what do you think are the most important qualities of a successful person?
Well, I guess it depends on how you define success. I know that I used to define success in a certain way, and I thought that was really important. But I have a lot of people in my life who are very successful by the standards of the world who are miserable. And we know this, right? You go to places that have large swaths of populations who are not successful by the ways of the world, but they're very happy. I've realized that the worldly definition of success doesn't really matter. I think understanding what your purpose is, having meaning around your life, and then being able to go and execute against that is what success is.
And where can people go to connect with you and support everything that you're doing?
Well, my vlog is at facebook.com/John Kim Co. I have a website, johnkim.co, JOHNKAM.co. So I post a daily devotional there, weekdays. I take break on weekends. I still have QT, by the way. I'm not posting it. And yeah, please subscribe there. I'm very open. You can ping me an email anytime. I'm on LinkedIn. You can send me a DM there, Instagram, whatever. I'm not as active on some of these, but I have a Twitter account. I have an Instagram account. I'm not super active there, but I check my messages from time to time.
And that was the end of episode 38. The transcripts and links to everything we've just talked about can be found at sothisismywhy.com/38, including a link to sign up for a weekly newsletter that I run, where I list all the fascinating and inspiring things I've read and learned over the course of the week. And stay tuned for next Sunday, because we'll be meeting a former serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, 15-time book author, podcaster, and chief evangelist of Apple and Canva on his journey to becoming one of the most known brand evangelists in the world, as well as what it was like working with the late Steve Jobs. See you next Sunday.